Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday or happy whatever day you're listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. It honestly means a lot. I do look at our analytics because I like to see how many people we're reaching and how many people are joining in on this conversation. And it truly means a lot to me that more of you each week are coming back and maybe you're telling your friends and your family. And that's really what the whole Self Love Club is all about. It is truly a community. It's something that has been really close to my heart for so long about just growing a space where we can have open conversations. There's no judgment. We explore different topics, obviously centered around self love and self care. But the whole thing is just making everyone feel heard, seen, valued, and loved. So by joining us, by being here, by being a part of our community, it really is you showing up for yourself, but also creating space for other people to feel that value and love that they're probably all looking for, because let's be honest, we all want to feel that. And at least I do. I know that's definitely something that's been in me for a long time, and I hope you can relate to that. So I just wanted to start with saying a big thank you to all of you. I'm really excited for this week because, similar to what I just said, this is about the collective of us. So I know we've been talking about speaking up. We've done some homework, some practice around the importance of speaking up, how to find your voice, how speaking up can really build your confidence, is an act of empowerment, all these different things. Obviously, we know now that speaking up is just so important to our personal life stories, our relationships, and just growing as an individual. But this week, I want to talk a little bit more about the ripple effect of speaking up, because I think it's so important to see how when we do something, it can cause a positive change. And we live in a world where there's a lot of ripple effects. There's a lot of things that affect other people. And unfortunately, I think what we hear more often than not is the negative ripple effects of what's happening in the world. And I really would love to see that change. I know I personally actively search out positive things. So there's an Instagram account I follow called, I believe it's Good News Movement. And then there's a few other ones along that line, but I'll put that one in the show notes because it's one that I love, and it just shares good news. I think it's so important to see stories, hear news, hear about other people's lives that's positive, because it can just incite more positivity into your own life. So that's really what speaking up can also do. Whether you realize it or not, when you speak up, you're actually going to be impacting others in your life, in your relationships, and just in your community, that give them space and acceptance to also speak up, which I think is really what we're all looking for, is just that space and safety to be able to use our voice and share it authentically. Obviously, when we speak up, it can cause a positive chain of effect, and the hope is that it's actually a catalyst of positivity by sharing our stories, creating space. And one main way that we're doing that is by the power of authenticity. I know that's sort of like a key word or a trending word that we've heard a lot, especially in social media over the last couple of years, about being authentic, about being true. But when you're speaking up your voice, you know what your inner voice is saying, and you're actually putting it out there in different relationships and situations. You're being completely authentic to yourself. So we embrace our authenticity and show others the powers of living truthfully, which I think that in itself is just so special, of being able to live in your truth and find that power and courage in doing so. By sharing our experiences, thoughts, and perspectives, we create space that encourages others to do the same. It's sort of like, when you're teaching someone is watch me do, I'll watch you do, and then you'll go ahead and do it. Something like that. I know there's a saying around when you're teaching someone that you lead first and then you do it together and then they do it themselves. So it's that sort of concept. Our authenticity becomes a beacon of inspiration, illuminating the path for others to find the courage to express their own unique voices. This is something that we are committed to doing here at the Self Love Club. I know I've already said that, but it's just something that I really want to circle back around, that this is really the why of the Self Love Club, is just to make sure other people find their voice, feel comfortable in sharing their stories, feel comfortable in their truth, and not feel alone in what they're going through. And I think that's what's really important about the Self Love Club. the thing that we're doing with the self-love club, I know I'm just going to be repeating myself, so I'm sorry in advance, but hopefully I'm really getting this mission across. But it all relates back to speaking up, is we're creating safe spaces. I know this is something that we've talked about in relationships, and having safe relationships that you can feel connected to, you have space to be your authentic self. But that's really what we're doing when we're speaking up, is we're creating safe spaces for dialogues and self-expression. And when we break silence, we encourage others to open up and share their stories, their fears, and aspirations. By fostering an environment of trust and understanding, we establish a foundation where everyone's voice is valued, amplifying the collective power of diverse perspectives. That's so big, diverse perspectives, because we're not all going to have the same perspective. We're not all going to believe the same thing. We're not all going to assume that we have the same outlook on life. But it's so important to hold space for others that maybe don't see the world the way that we do. And that's okay. It's okay to be different. It's okay to not agree on everything. But it's so important to hold space for each other when we're sharing our stories and we're sharing our perspectives, because we're not all going to be different, and we need to celebrate each other's differences and hold space for each other. A big thing that speaking up does, and this is one that I love, is challenging the status quo. As someone who has always felt like I've been sort of swimming upstream in some of the narratives that the world has taught me, I love the idea of challenging the status quo, challenging what we've been told, what we've been taught, especially as a woman. I know for myself as a woman in business, this is something that really is, big to me, because I have been asked so many times if my father does the business side of Mary Young, if my father put money into the business, all these questions about a male being behind the business, because there's no way that me as a female could be. And that was really hard as a young entrepreneur to navigate those types of questions and interviews and just one-off conversations that I was having. But it also empowered me to realize that by chasing my dreams and doing what I felt was in my heart and soul, I was also challenging the status quo and making space for both men and women to do the same thing in their lives, whether that is being an entrepreneur or just challenging the status quo in some sort of way. So by speaking up, we challenge societal norms that are ingrained biases. When one person finds the strength to question the status quo, it empowers others to do the same. It's that sort of ripple effect, remember? By vocalizing our concerns, advocating for change, sharing alternative viewpoints, we invite others to critically examine their own beliefs and assumptions, ultimately fostering a more inclusive and accepting society. That's something that I love, is being able to encourage people to question their own beliefs. This is one thing that I've said to many of friends, many family members, is just ask yourself why. Ask yourself why you believe this, why you're buying this product, why you are saying these things. Where is this coming from? Is it coming from you, or is it coming from a repetitive narrative someone's been telling you? And by someone, it's often society and a marketing scheme. So it's just the importance of asking why is what will lead you to challenging the status quo and giving space to define what you need to define for yourself and create the path that is right for you and speak up for that. I love this one because it's about inspiring empathy and connection. When we share our stories and speak up about our experiences, we inspire empathy and connection. Our vulnerability allows others to see themselves in our narratives, fostering a deeper understanding of shared struggles, hopes, and dreams. The shared connection strengthens communities and encourages individuals to step forward, knowing they are not alone in their journey. That to me is huge. That is one reason why I've shared so many personal stories that are sometimes hard to share, like the loss of my father, dealing with anxiety and depression, all these different things I've shared from a very personal and raw perspective, because I want to make sure that no one else feels alone in their journey. There's been a lot of things I've had to navigate that I have felt very alone and I felt very isolated about, and I didn't speak up about them. For one thing was I was diagnosed with endometriosis when I was 20 years old, and there was a lot of shame around that at 20. There was a lot of shame about my body as a woman wasn't doing what it was supposed to correctly, that I was causing harm to myself because of this endometriosis, and I didn't really know what that meant. And I didn't talk about it to anyone, not even my closest friends. That was something that I buried in myself, and it ended up causing a lot of shame around myself. And in my later 20s, I finally was given space to share openly. And once I sort of like opened that chapter of my life when I was diagnosed and what I went through, there was such a huge relief for me in doing that. But then also, once I opened up and shared with some of my close friends, and even on Instagram, when I had a private Instagram, I realized there was a lot of people I knew that actually were already diagnosed with endometriosis or were going through the diagnosis. And it was so empowering to me to realize that my voice can connect other people. And then now I'm not alone either. I'm not the only one who's navigating this diagnosis and feeling confused about my body, that I had other people to talk to and share with and feel seen by. And so that type of connection and empathy in any area of life is so valuable to building community and building positive change, that for me, even when it's very uncomfortable and it's vulnerable, and here I am on a podcast and on YouTube, if you're watching, I am committing to sharing openly because I don't want anyone else to feel alone in what they're going through. And I also don't want to feel alone. And so by being the person who speaks up, I hope to be creating more space for the connection and empathy that we all need in society today. Another thing that speaking up does, and this is something I've personally experienced, is it's allowing mentoring and supporting others. So similar to creating space to talk about things, speaking up opens the door for mentoring and supporting others on their own path to finding their voices. As we inspire those around us, we become mentors and allies, offering guidance, encouragement, and resources. By actively lifting each other up, we create a network of empowered individuals who in turn become catalysts for further change and inspiration. This is so beautiful because we are a collective as a community. I think so often we end up feeling like we're alone in life and that we are trying to find our own place and we have to do it on our own terms and our own time, which is true that it has to be defined by ourselves, but we also can lean on others for support and mentorship. I personally have had mentors through business. I now have a personal coach that is helping me in my personal life. And I see so much value in mentorship. And I actually mentor a few other entrepreneurs and I do some consulting that feels like mentorship in some ways. And that to me is just so great that I can receive the mentoring that I need, but then I can also give that to other people by speaking up, by creating a space for all of us to share our experiences, share the good and the bad, and have that ability to build connection and support one another, because life can be really hard and we don't really want to be doing it alone. It's just not fun when you're alone going through the hardships. So we're really trying to find that space and that type of connection. And if you're someone who has wanted a mentor, maybe there's someone you follow on Instagram or you know in real life that would be a really huge impact in your life and a mentor, don't be afraid to reach out and ask them. I've had people come out of the blue that I barely know, but I had followed on Instagram and they followed me, ask me to be a mentor. And after conversation, it made so much sense for us to be mentors and mentees, because not only professionally, but also personally, there was so much overlap and support that we could give one another. And it is such a beautiful way of building bonds and connections. So don't be afraid to use your voice and speak up and ask someone to be your mentor if that's what you're looking for and you feel that you're needing in your life right now. One of the most important things about speaking up is embracing collaboration and collective action. This goes back to creating a space together where we can all be valued, heard, seen, loved, but also supported in creating a positive change for society. The ripple effect of speaking up extends way beyond individual empowerment. It drives collective action. When voices unite, they become a powerful force for change. By speaking up together, we amplify our impact, advocate for justice, and tackle systematic issues. The collective power of diverse voices has the potential to reshape society, creating a more inclusive and equitable world for all. That holds so much weight when you just think about that, reshaping society. We've seen so much turmoil in society over the past couple of years with the resurgence of the Black Lives Matters movement, and seeing how many voices collectively came together during the global pandemic to advocate for change and advocate for visibility and really bring these voices together into one unified voice. And it was obviously such an emotional experience seeing the hardships and the loss that really ignited this. but also seeing how many people were united in having a voice and being collective in the desire and the need, the actual need for change. And that's really what speaking up to me is about, is if we all sit back and we don't use our voice, we will not change the world and the society that we live in. And if you take a few minutes today, I'm sure you can look at the world you live in, the society you're a part of, and find things that you just do not agree with. And that is good, because that means you have a place that you can speak up and you can start to encourage and inspire change. And it can start with just your friends and your family. It can start as small as a collective of just the people you see on a daily basis. Because if we all choose to impact and have these conversations with those we see on a daily basis, add all those different groups up together, we're going to make a huge impact for change. And I know it often feels like our voices get lost in the mix of how big the world is, how big our country, our city is, but your voice matters, your feelings matter, and it's so, so important to speak up, not only for yourself, but also for the collective change and the collective betterness of the world, because that's something that we not only owe it to ourselves, but we owe it to future generations. So I hope this week left you feeling inspired, not overwhelmed with how speaking up can be a big ripple effect. I know sometimes when you think about having a ripple effect, it feels like, okay, well, I have all this power. How do I use it? It feels overwhelming. I really want this to be an inspiring week of looking in your life and looking at the relationships you have, the people you have conversations with, and think about how can you continue to have these conversations that collectively create more space for speaking up, inspire others to do the same, and make people feel empowered within their voices. Because like I've said so many times, your voice matters and your feelings matter. And I want to make sure that all of you know that and feel that and are encouraged to encourage others to know that and feel that within themselves. So if you haven't followed us on Instagram, you can follow our brand Mary Young at It's Mary Young. We do a lot of Self-Love Club content over there. You can read this on the Self-Love Club journal at maryyoung.com. If you have questions, you have feedback, we now have a voicemail page, so you can actually leave like a voice note for me. So that's linked in the show notes. I would love to hear from you. We might be doing some one-off episodes, doing some like Q&A. So if it doesn't relate to speaking up, honestly, don't worry. If you just have any questions around truly anything, I love to chat, as you can probably tell, because here I am week after week chatting with you. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me at Maria Foriata on Instagram. And again, everything is linked in the show notes. And if you've been listening for a while and you haven't rated or you haven't subscribed to us, this is totally the time to subscribe. You'll get notified when new episodes come out. And maybe rate us 5 stars, because I think if you've been listening to us week after week, I would like to think that we're worth 5 stars. So feel free to rate us. Again, if you have any feedback, questions, or anything, I love to hear from you. I love our community and I love you so much. I hope you have an amazing day, and remember to love yourself first.